Psalms chapter 1 this morning. We'll also be in 1 Kings chapter 2 in just a little bit, but we're going to start in Psalms chapter 1. And asking the Lord what to say this morning. I went all over the place. You guys know I love talking about God's faithfulness and His love and who He is. And we've had a series on that. We've talked about all of that. And I said, God, I want to preach what you want me to preach. And I thought about another parable, because there's some really good parables. The parable of the prodigal son paints a beautiful picture of the Father and His love for us. How He was looking for His son when He was afar off. The imagery is amazing. But I felt the Lord this week wanted us to talk about integrity. And so although this may be directed towards men and fathers, it's for all of us. But specifically for the men, we need men and fathers and father figures of integrity in this nation. I believe a lot of the reason that we have the problems that we do is because people are different behind closed doors than they are in public. Our politicians want the sound bites, not to serve the constituents anymore. Not all of them. I'm painting with a broad brush. But it seems like more and more they're just out for a soundbite, and we've lost the heart of public servants. And I think a lot of that is due to integrity. So, I can't change the world, but I can at least share what God says about it here today, and hopefully we can shore up some of the integrity in our lives as well. Let's start with Psalms chapter 1, verse 1 through 3. It says, "How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in His law he meditates day and night. He will be like a tree firmly planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. And in whatever he does, he prospers." And then jump ahead a couple of books with me to 1 Kings chapter 2. 1 Kings chapter 2, and let's just look at a couple of verses there as well. It says, "When the time drew near for David to die, he gave a charge to Solomon his son. 'I am about to go the way of all the earth,' he said. 'So be strong, act like a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in obedience to Him and keep His decrees and commands, His laws and regulations, as written in the law of Moses. Do this so that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you go, and that the Lord may keep His promise to me. If your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me with all their heart and soul, you will never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel.'" So I guess the question this morning for Father's Day is, what makes a good man? Not what makes a man accomplished or successful or how strong he can be, but what makes a good man? And as David nears the end of his life here in 1 Kings, he gives Solomon that one final lesson. He doesn't tell him to build a bigger army, to accumulate more wealth, to seek people's approval, or to do any of the other things. He says, be strong, act like a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. And so he gives us a pattern of how God wants us to live. David understood something that many people miss. Character is far more important than any accomplishments that you may have. Psalm 1 showed us that character is formed. Integrity doesn't just begin with behavior. It begins with where we plant our roots. The man who delights in God, walks in His ways, remains faithful to His presence, becomes a person of integrity and strength. So integrity is not something that we can manufacture through willpower. You can't just try harder and become a man of integrity. Integrity is the fruit that grows out of a life that is deeply and firmly rooted in God. The man of integrity, first of all, chooses his path. It says, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers." Notice that progression there. From walking to standing to sitting. If you've been around any length of time and you've been human for longer than about 3 months, you realize that sin is rarely some dramatic departure from what you were 5 minutes ago. The folks that we see that, even in the church, that have moral failures or something of that nature, where it seems like everything's going really great and all of a sudden it seems like there's a failure. Can I tell you that wasn't all of a sudden? That happened long before anybody else ever saw it happen, because their character and integrity got compromised somewhere along the line. It's typically, as the old song says, a slow fade. You don't wake up one day and you've been godly and righteous like Job, and then you're like, you know what, I'm just going to, go have an affair. That doesn't happen. It's typically that slow, one little thing at a time that slowly wears away at your character and in your integrity. It starts with small compromises, little influences that we don't get out of the way, small permissions to allow ourselves to sin in small ways that lead to the large failures down the line. Saul and David were two pictures of that. Saul looked like the ideal king. He's, this picture of strength. He's tall, he's impressive, had all the outward qualities, but he repeatedly chose his own path over God's commands. Repeatedly. Not just once. God didn't cut him off of the throne because he failed one time. His character and his integrity had degraded to a point where God had to use someone else. His outward appearance hid that inward compromise of his heart. But David, far from perfect, how many times have we talked about that? This man, if you just look at all the stuff he did wrong, you're like, this is the hero of the faith? This is the guy that God said is a man after? Really? I mean, some major sins, not least of which is adultery and murder. But this guy wasn't great. But the difference was when he was confronted with his sin, he repented. He failed and then sought the Lord. His integrity was not found in perfection, but in the direction of his life. That heart direction towards God, that once he realized how far he had gone, he came back to God. He repented. He laid on the floor and wept and fasted. He was a man of repentance. One man appeared to be strong but drifted from God. The other often stumbled but continually returned to God. And that's the man that tells his son, hey, act like a man. Follow God's decrees. Integrity is not perfection. I'm not asking anybody in this room to be perfect. Integrity is a heart that keeps choosing God's path consistently over time. That faithfulness in a long direction. Integrity is not built in moments of crisis. It's built in little daily decisions over and over again. And the strongest men are the ones who consistently say no to the wrong influences long before anybody else ever notices. Those are the strongest men, because character is formed one choice at a time. Godly character is formed by walking with God one step at a time. You're not going to go from crawling to running with God. It's going to be one step, one foot in front of the other, over and over again, that long faithfulness in the same direction. The second thing that Psalms teaches us is that the man of integrity delights in God's presence. It tells us, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. There's a lot of people that approach God as an obligation. Oh, I've got to go to church. I've got to be there a certain amount of time. I've got to put in my dues. That's not what God is asking for. The righteous person approaches God as a treasure. Just like we've talked about throughout the parables, we have to approach him with the correct view of the value that he gives to our lives. And I've told you, I've tried to make the case, the value proposition of what God gives versus what we bring to the table is incredibly lopsided. For us, we get way more than we give. But God still calls us his inheritance and his treasure. And so we have to value God as well. Integrity cannot be sustained by just rules. I'm not talking about just rule following. Rules can control behavior for a season, but only a relationship changes the heart. A true relationship. The person who loves God, truly and deeply loves God, will naturally desire to walk in God's ways. I've said it before, if I love my wife, I will want to make her happy, to please her, to do things for her, not because I have to, not because she demands it of me, not because she wakes up and gives me a list of things I need to do. She doesn't, thank God. But I should want to do those things because I love her. If she gave me a list, I would do it because I love her. Like I said, she doesn't. Sometimes I wish she would. Just tell me what you want. No. But God tells us what he wants. He gave us an entire book of how he wants us to act. All we have to do is just follow the love letter. David understood this, and despite his failures, he continually pursued God's presence. And that is at the crux of what we're talking about today. The Psalms are filled with David's longing for God. He didn't just obey God's command. He desired God himself. And that's the difference. We're always going to move towards what we love the most or what we focus on the most. When we're driving, we don't want to keep our eyes straight on the road ahead of us. Anybody ever taken your eyes off the road for a second? Where do you head? Oh, look, there's a crash over there. You're going to head where your eyes are going. Not on purpose, but because where you focus, you're going to turn. This one time, now this was a long time ago. Don't tell, oh, well, Mom's in here. Hope Dad's not watching. This was a long time ago. I think this might have been back in high school. Everything worked out okay. I'm telling on myself here. But I got up to, I was probably going to school or something. And got to the end of my road, and I made the left, and I got on the main road, and I went to roll my window up. I don't know why I had frost on it or something. I couldn't see, so I'd rolled my window down, made sure I was safe. I was being super safe. And there was a car a long way away, but it was a big truck coming this way, but he was far enough away, and I slowly made my turn onto the road, and I went to roll my window up, and my window didn't roll up. And I went, what in the world? And I looked down, and at that point, I had a little four-door car, so it's got two windows in the back, two windows in the front. I was pulling up on the back window. That doesn't help you when your front window's down. So what do? I look at it, I pull the one for the front window. Where's my attention? Where did my hands go? When I finally looked up, there was a truck halfway off in the ditch, and I was in his lane. I'm very grateful that the Lord protected me. I had just turned onto the road. I just left the house, whipped it back on the road. I was safe. He got out of the way. I'm very grateful that man went off the road and did not hit me head on, because it would have been bad. So I'm telling on myself, but I'm grateful for God's protection, one. And two, we will go where we're looking. I was looking down at something I shouldn't have been paying attention to. Almost ran somebody off the road, had a head-on collision. We will go where we focus. we'll go in the direction and we'll always move towards what we love the most. So if that's why Scripture tells us to keep our eyes on the author and perfecter of our faith. Not on ourselves, not on the noise around us and the chaos, not the people, but keep our eyes focused on him. And when we do that, the other stuff will kind of take care of itself. If our hearts delight in God, then obedience becomes that natural response to the love that we have for him. So the question is not, how strong is my discipline? The real better question is, do I truly delight in God? Is it something that it's a chore to do? Or do I really love God? Do I want to please him? Do I want to be closer to him? Because what we treasure will ultimately shape our character. Whose we are will shape who we are. If we delight in success and comfort and reputation or pleasure, our lives will reflect those priorities. And you can be very successful by worldly standards. There's plenty of examples. But if we delight in God, our lives will increasingly reflect his character. And I dare say at the right time, God will bless far greater than anything we could ever strive to achieve on our own. So the last thing is that the man of integrity is also strength for others. As we look at men and being like a tree, that idea of a person like a tree planted by the streams of water, which yields its fruit in season and whose leaf does not wither. Notice here that the tree is planted. It's not drifting around somewhere. It's not shallow. It's not constantly being uprooted and moved somewhere else. That tends not to work well for plants. They tend to work a little better if you plant them and leave them alone. I've talked a lot about my garden this year. I say garden, a couple little raised beds. Some of them are doing really, really well. I picked cucumbers and okra yesterday. Not a lot, but a little bit. I got 2 okra. I don't know what I'm going to do with 2 okra, but I got 2 okra. I got a half dozen cucumbers. Those are doing real well. It's not too hot yet. But I've got this little tomato plant, and he's about this big. The rest of my tomato plants are about this big. Because that little guy was part of like a little 2-stem thing, and somebody told me, hey, all those little furry things on the side of that plant, they'll become roots if you plant them deep enough. I said, okay, let's find out. So I took my little shovel, trowel, whatever, baby shovel, and I cut it, and I dug a hole, and I stuck him in it because I had an extra place for a tomato plant. He's not doing great. I told you the other ones are up here. I cut him too late. That's probably what happened. But I cut him off and I planted him. Now, he's not doing as great as the one that just stayed planted the whole time. But he grew roots, and he's got a little baby tomato on him this big, and he's only this tall, so I don't know how that's going to work out, but he's trying. He's trying real hard. But it worked. Those little fuzzies must have turned into roots somewhere. Now, I didn't dig it up to find out. But it's alive because I've left it alone. I pampered it. I watered it, put a little fertilizer around it. I tried real hard. But if we're going to be the people of integrity that God's called us to be, we've got to stay planted and not get moved around all the time. We've got to have roots that are deep and hidden. And I meant to put this on the screen, and I apologize, but you guys have seen the pictures of the trees, and it's got the cross-section of the roots underneath, and it almost looks like a mirror. If you get the right tree, now not these pine trees that we got around here that have, 2 foot of roots on a 100-foot tall tree. I'm talking about a big oak tree, like a good, grand tree that flowers out, leaves out. The big tree. You guys are with me. I don't have the right words for it. But the roots look just like the leaves above it. Why? Because those roots, you can see the evidence of how good the roots are by what's up top. It's the same way in our lives. And it may take a while. Now, those oak trees take a long time to grow. But once they do, those roots run deep. The fruit might be visible, but the roots are hidden, and the roots are the most important part of that tree, because you cut those roots off, the whole thing's going to die. If those roots aren't deep, if they don't have access to water, if they don't have access to good nutrients, that tree is going to die. It may take a while. I've got another tree in my yard that got hit by lightning a few years ago. We were sitting on the back porch. It was raining. It was beautiful. Like, thank you, Lord, for the rain. Sounds great. Hannah loves a rainstorm. So we're just sitting out there. We had Lucas. And then all of a sudden we hear, bam. And it was close and it was loud. There wasn't we saw the flash and then heard it. No, it was all simultaneously. Scared us to death. We run inside, shut the door. I go out the next day. We were sitting on the back porch, the front yard. Tree had gotten hit at the top, and that lightning ran all the way to the bottom and blew half the tree out. Now, that's been before Isaac was born, so it's been 4 or 5 years ago now. That tree's still standing, but barely. There's a wedge in that tree that's probably that deep that is rotten and falling out because that tree's dead. It affected the roots. It's going to die. It's not going to be, I'm going to have to cut it down before it falls on somebody. I know that. I've been buying my time. But that tree is not healthy. But when we're planted deeply and firmly by the river of life, when our roots run deep, that's integrity. It's that hidden daily faithfulness towards God that allows us to produce good fruit, to become a tree of shelter for birds and everything else. And you get the metaphor there, I think. What nobody sees beneath the surface eventually becomes what everybody else experiences above the surface. David told Solomon to walk faithfully before God because a king's integrity affects the entire kingdom, and that same principle applies today. A father's integrity affects his family. A husband's integrity affects a marriage. A leader's integrity affects the organization that he's in. And a Christian's integrity affects their witness and everybody that's around them. People are nourished by the fruit that grows from our lives if we're men and women of integrity. For fathers today specifically, like, your children are probably not going to remember every lesson that you teach them. I don't remember everything that my parents taught me. I wish I did, but I don't. But they will remember the example that you set. That consistency. And so the greatest gift that a father can give his children is not wealth or success or opportunity. It's a life that consistently points them to Jesus. A life of integrity, being the same behind closed doors as you are in front of everybody else. Your family doesn't need a perfect man. We don't need perfect men at this church. What we need, what your family needs, are faithful men whose roots run deep, planted in God's presence every single day. A man whose private devotion produces a public character that we would want to replicate. And so I'm wrapping it up with this. We read Psalm 1, and it presented kind of two paths. If you keep reading in Psalms, it talks about the wicked in contrast to the righteous. One becomes this flourishing tree. The other one is just chaff blown by the wind. And the difference here isn't talent or intelligence or influence or opportunity. The difference is where the roots are planted, who you are, your character, your integrity. As David was preparing Solomon to lead, he didn't tell him to focus on becoming stronger or richer or more successful. He told him to walk in God's ways. And Psalm 1 tells us that same thing. I think it's insightful also that whoever put the Psalms together a long, long time ago started with Psalm 1. Not with, some of the other amazing Psalms that are all throughout this book, but teaching us the same thing that David gives to Solomon right before his death. Now, we don't know if David wrote Psalm 1 or not. And there's some argument that he probably didn't. But to start with that, and then to cap off David's life by saying, these are the things you should do, it's this echo of what God is saying. It shows us that this wisdom is timeless and the principles still apply to us today. If you want to become a person of integrity, don't focus on trying harder. Just focus on drawing near to God. Keep your eyes on Him. Stay planted in His presence. Delight in His word. Walk in His ways. Do what Psalm 1 tells us to do. Because integrity is kind of that fruit of a life that's rooted in God. Character and who you are comes out of a life rooted in God, whose you are. A good man is not defined by perfection, but by faithful devotion to God. And when a man is rooted in God, then strength and character and integrity will follow. Who you are when no one is looking is your character. I've heard that for years, and it's true. How you respond, even when the decision is difficult and painful, and maybe isn't in your best interest. Maybe you've messed up and done something wrong, but your character and integrity make you tell the truth, even when it's difficult. That's integrity. We need men and women, but we need men of good, godly character and integrity. Integrity matters. Who you are on the inside matters the most. Not what you've done, what you've accomplished, how big a bank account you've got. I'd love a bigger one, trust me. And God has blessed me far beyond what I deserve. But all of that really pales in comparison to the light of eternity. So my challenge this week is really simple. For each of us, and especially dads, just examine yourselves. Take a moment to look inside and allow God to look inside to see if you're a man of integrity or not. Make sure that the day-to-day life, what your wife sees, what your kids see, what your closest friends see, make sure that matches up with how you live the rest of your life. Are you a man of integrity or not? If your sons and daughters turned out to be like you, is that a good thing or a bad thing? If the people, maybe you're not a father, but you've got a maybe influence and you're a father figure to somebody. The people that you mentor and have influence with, if they had your integrity, as they grow up, would the world be a better place in 10 years or worse? Those are the kinds of questions that when we ask ourselves that, it can change how we live our lives. We don't often think about the long-term ripple effects of what we're doing and how we live. But if my kids end up like me, I've got to ask myself, is that a good thing or a bad thing? We heard it down at Network Conference this year. If there were a bunch more like you, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And he said, if somebody wanted a double portion of what you have, is that enough? Is that something that God would be pleased with? Or is a double portion just barely a little bit more? Would somebody actually want more of what you have? If you're a man of integrity, the answer is yes. Quite simply, yes. If you're a woman of integrity, the answer is yes. People should want more. Take a moment and ask yourselves that this week. I don't need to know, but it's something we all have to ask ourselves.